God. Right. Good morning, everybody. Did we all go out late last night and see the strawberry moon? No? Well, this morning, a little few facts about the moon. Yeah, I did. Beautiful, wasn't it? Anyway, the moon is a supermoon because of its proximity to the Earth, and it's also known as the strawberry moon because it is the full moon at strawberry harvest time. So the full moon names date back a few hundred years to Native Americans living in what is now the northern and eastern United States. Those tribes kept track of the seasons by giving distinctive names to each recurring moon. The name for the moon then lasted for the full month. Each name relates to the farmer's almanac. So January is a wolf moon, February is the snow moon, March is a full worm moon, April is a full pink, May full flower, June is strawberry, July is a buck moon, August is sturgeon, September is harvest or corn, depending upon which website you read, October is hunters, and November is the beaver, and December, very aptly, is the cold one. So, since the lunar month is roughly only 29.5 days in length, on average, the dates of the full moon and the other moon phases shift from year to year and month to month. And I hope you all found that very informative and enlightening.
Well, I remember going to a nightclub in Maidstone called Strawberry Moons, so now I know where the name came from.
There you go. It must have opened in June.
Must have done.
Yeah. Right, so this morning is all about AML, really. But firstly, we've got Matthew Chapman from Company Protection. He's the commercial director. This is a new member benefit. It identifies financial risk in yours and your client's business. It's a fee-free service, and you get commission for referrals. And what I'm most interested in, Matthew, is he will provide a free guide to business continuity document and brand it with your business logo for you to present to your clients.
Indeed.
Good morning, Matthew. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it. Nice to see you all.
Oh, I look forward to it.
Excellent.
Do you want to share screen?
Yeah, would you mind? Are you okay to make me a host and I will share my screen? Oh, 1 second.
Will it let you?
You might need to click the 3 dots next to me on the image and then just make me host if that's all right.
I
There
don't
we
know.
go. Got it. Perfect. I have it. Just checking. Can everybody see that?
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. In that case, I shall begin. Firstly, just thank you very much for having me today. Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate you having me on this wonderful June morning. It's beautiful outside. Kind of wish I was in the garden drinking a cocktail, but hey, instead you got to listen to me talking about boring insurances. Now, I've called this presentation a guide to spotting and reducing the various financial risks within your clients' businesses, which sounds incredibly boring, and I apologize for that. But what I'm really trying to do is help to highlight some of the things that maybe you or even your clients hadn't actually considered are the real things that they ought to be worried about. And don't forget, if you think about it this way, the more financially resilient your clients are as businesses, the more likely they are to achieve their financial objectives, and the more likely they're going to continue to use your services and work with you in the future. So when I talk about company protection, the way I think of it is by default, if we protect your clients, we're actually protecting your bookkeeping businesses as well. So let's get cracking. What am I actually talking about when I talk about business protection or company protection? Well, most companies, and ironically, their professional advisors, often are mistaken when they prioritize the kind of risks that companies should be thinking about. And what I mean by this is that nearly all companies have some kind of commercial insurance contract, and that's designed to protect the business against several internal and external risks. So that might be, for example, public liability, professional indemnity, premises, business interruption, right? The problem is that whilst some of them are very valuable, and in many cases, they're mandatory insurances, they don't provide protection against the real single biggest financial threat to any business, and that's the loss of key personnel. Now, we all know deep down that people are pretty key to a business, but sometimes we forget just how critical they are. So most small business owners, they kind of just go through the motions. They don't really think about what would happen if they or someone else that they rely on very heavily were to fall ill, die, or even leave the business. And the devastating impact that this can have on finances and the business cannot really be overstated. I don't think I can emphasize it enough. And the problem is, by the time people realize they need it, it's often too late. It's like most things in life, right? And I often have clients say to me, well, I don't really need illness cover right now. And this might sound a little bit condescending, so I apologize if it does, but what I normally say is, don't worry, why don't you just message me a couple of days before you get cancer and I'll set the policy up. And what I'm really trying to do there is actually just highlight that we just don't know what's around the corner, do we? If we knew, we wouldn't need insurances. So it's kind of naive to think that we don't need to protect ourselves from the unexpected, right? Now, I mean, here's a prime example. Who would have predicted COVID? And we all knew something like that might happen, but we didn't know when and how it was going to happen. So to highlight how reliant businesses are on key people, there was some recent research carried out by Legal & General. And what it did was it showed that the most significant risk to any company is the loss of an owner or another key person within the business. Now, 94% of companies recognize they have at least one key person, and they said that 60% said that they would cease trading within a year of losing that person. Now, if you increase that period to 2 years, over 70% of businesses that were surveyed said that they would fail. Now, these are your clients. So let's consider what the top risks for any company are. Now, of the companies surveyed, 52%, that's more than half, stated the biggest threat that they faced was the death of an owner or a key person within the business. And then over a third, that's 35% of respondents, said that one of the top 3 other risks to the business would be an owner or another key person becoming critically ill and being unable to work. Now, that's not dying, that's becoming too ill to work, which in reality is very common. And if we consider the other factor, which is the loss of major contracts, as the second biggest threat to any business, let's think about what might cause that. Well, perhaps the trigger for losing key contracts might be losing the figurehead of the business or even the key account manager that's responsible for running and managing and recruiting those contracts, right? But if you note, that's really important here, the biggest threats aren't vandalism, they're not theft, they're not fire or some sort of liability claim. They're all related to the loss of the key people that run, drive, and support the business. So it pays to think about how you and your clients might be able to protect themselves against these more tangible risks, okay? Now, we all kind of know what the risks are. We've just looked at them. But what are the consequences of not having suitable financial protection in place? What are the real concerns that business owners face? Well, in the event of something unexpected happening to one of the owners or key people within the business, the 4 primary areas of concern are usually as follows. The need to pay off significant debts. Now, most people don't realize that by law, directors' loan accounts have to be repaid immediately to the estate of the deceased person when they die. Now, that could really damage cash flow and potentially cripple a lot of businesses if they're sitting on large DLA accounts. It's an interesting fact. The average company borrowing at the minute is over £200,000, with 75% of businesses having some form of company debts in place. Are they protected? Who knows? Another issue is maintaining profits. So unless they've set up as such, which is the case with most companies, they're not run as charities. They're run as a business to make a profit. So when a key person that's responsible for generating that profit dies, falls ill, or leaves the business, this can have a serious impact on the business's performance. Now, another key concern is retaining control of the business, because statistically, most businesses have absolutely no specific arrangements in place for their shares in the event of one of the death of the serious owners, serious owners of one of the owners. So the question there is, who's going to inherit the shares? What will they do with them? Do they have a vested interest in the business? Do they even know how it operates? What happens to those shares when that person dies? And finally, the last thing is keeping staff within the company. So this is attracting and retaining the key people in the business, because we can insure against death and illness, but what about people leaving to join the competition? Well, there's no specific insurance for that, but what we can do is use some of these insurance contracts, such as income cover, critical illness, life insurance, and even private health insurance, as employee benefits to try and incentivize those key members of staff to stay and remain at the business, okay? Now, you guys know your clients best. I'm not going to pretend like I do. You guys know them best. You know how those businesses are run. You guys as bookkeepers have special insight into who at those businesses are critical to its performance and financial management. But when a company loses one or more of its key people, those people are critical to its success, the effects can be really, really dramatic. And having appropriate company protection solutions in place is pretty critical to maintaining that profitability, keeping control of the business, and providing confidence to everyone involved during challenging times. So company protection solutions provide businesses with that injection of capital. It's that injection of money that can help keep things on track when something unexpected happens. Now, each plan has been set up to meet a specific need. That's how we do it. It's very holistic. So one might be, I don't know, replacing a key member of the team and the profits they generate if they become ill. Another might be paying off a specific loan or a commercial mortgage if the business owner dies and has a personal guarantee in place. And having those appropriate solutions and policies in place helps provide security and confidence to the remaining owners, employees, investors, creditors, debtors, clients, suppliers, anyone that's involved in the business, because it's going to show that it's going to remain BAU, even if the worst was to happen. Okay? So the best way to think about company protection is a form of business continuity planning. Now, not many people do this, but it's really important to look at business continuity planning in a holistic way. And this is kind of how you guys can then approach it with your clients when you bring up the subject matter. Now, the core company protection solutions that we offer, they basically provide essential financial support to the business when it loses a key member of staff to illness, injury, or death. It injects cash into the business that can be used to pay off debts, replace profits, recruit replacement staff, and it buys time for the business until they can get back on track and on its feet. They can also be used to buy shares back from the deceased stakeholders so that remaining owners keep control of the business. Now, these solutions include key person insurance, shareholder protection, and company loan protection. Now, you've probably heard a number of those before. But to help you and your clients understand more about the need for business continuity planning, and as Caroline mentioned a minute ago, what we've done is we've produced a very comprehensive guide to business continuity. And it explains all about risk and what to think about and how to plan for business continuity if something was to go wrong. And again, as Caroline mentioned, we can co-brand that for you and put your logo on it and give you a tool that you can give to your clients completely free of charge to add value to what you do and explain a bit more about what they might be wanting to think about. And then to make life even easier, what we also do is we produce free personalized risk reports for your clients that they can then use to assess their own risk. They can prioritize their concerns and decide how they might want to protect themselves in the future. And then finally, when it comes to employee benefits, we offer a range of products that can be used to help attract and retain those key members of staff, which include things like relevant life insurance. If you haven't heard of that before, it's essentially a tax-efficient life insurance contract, like a private death in service. It's perfect for directors and smaller SMEs that might not potentially qualify for what they call a group scheme. We also do executive income protection, which is like a private sick pay, or the best way to describe it is like having your own private furlough scheme that's paid for by the business. It pays replacement income if a director or a key employee can't work due to illness or injury. And then we also have things like private health insurance, group income cover, group life insurance, group critical illness cover too. Okay. Now, to try and help you understand if your clients in particular need company protections when you're looking at those businesses that you represent and service, let's think about what you might want to be looking at in terms of triggers, potential flags. I've put together a very simple list of sort of 6 indicative flags that might suggest that your client ought to speak to us or get some advice. So for example, are they a limited company with 2 or more shareholders? If so, there's a very real risk of trouble and financial consequence if one of them dies or loses capacity, if they haven't got plans in place. Is your client looking for ways to potentially reduce their corporate tax liability? And the reason I ask that is because a lot of the plans that we can arrange can actually be treated as allowable expenses. Do they have any commercial loans, debts, directors' loan accounts, personal guarantees, or other forms of credit or borrowing that if they were needed to be repaid immediately would have a financial impact on the business? If so, we can protect against them until they're repaid. Do they have one or more key people that's critical to success that we ought to be looking to protect the business against? Do they have any key employees that they want to offer employee benefits to reduce the risk of losing them? And then finally, is the business you're working with considering or in the process of selling their business or buying another business? If that's the case, we can potentially de-risk that transaction. Now, if you or your clients answer yes to any of those questions, they really ought to speak to one of our consultants about how we can potentially de-risk the business, improve their financial resilience, and take advantage of any tax relief available to them using the plans. So how do we actually work with bookkeepers such as yourselves? How does it actually work? Well, recently, we've been very fortunate enough to partner with the IAB, and we're really pleased to enjoy this partnership with you guys. And the idea is we're here to provide essential support to you in terms of identifying the key risks, the key financial risks within your clients' businesses, and to give you guys a range of tools and services aimed at helping them to become more financially resilient. I mean, who wouldn't want to be financially resilient right now? And over the coming months, what we'll be doing is producing a series of educational webinars, informative articles, case studies, and top tips on what to look out for when you're speaking to those clients. Key things to note about our relationship. We don't charge any fees at all for our services, none at all. It's a totally fee-free service. We are a consultative business. We work with you to help identify those risks and cover those risks off with suitable policies. The way we earn our money is we get paid by insurance companies when we successfully place business. Now, what's good about that is it keeps us fairly honest. It keeps us focused on delivering good service and positive outcomes for you and your clients. Because if we don't, we don't get paid, right? And best of all, when we do get paid, what we do, as Caroline mentioned, is we give you guys a share of whatever we earn to thank you for introducing your clients to us. And to give you a couple of examples of what that might look like, here's 2 examples of cases we've done recently. So we had a B&B, a restaurant that was run by husband and wife, and it was referred over to us by their accountant. Both of the people in the business were fairly critical to it, so we arranged some key person cover. And what we did a loan protection to cover their commercial mortgage that they got on the property. As parents, we also arranged relevant life plans for them, which provided death in service to their family if they were to pass away. And we ended up paying that accountant over £550 in commissions just for sending the client over to us. And then a more important one was a bookkeeper recently referred over a newly launched company. It was a branding and marketing agency run by 2 friends. So we arranged shareholder protection for them to help retain control if either of these friends died unexpectedly. That means that the family get compensation if they die because the shares get bought back by the business and the company gets to retain control. So everybody's a winner. We also arrange key person for them in their respective roles within the business, private health insurance, life cover, and income cover for both of them. And that provides an employee benefit because they can protect their families financially, even if they can't work. And in the end, we paid that introducer over £2,500 in commission just for sending the client over to us. So to summarize how we work with you guys, you're going to get paid for doing the right thing for your client. Now, for me, what's not to love about that? I really hope, guys, you found this useful and informative. Hope it's been quite interesting. By all means, please do visit our website to learn a bit more about what we do at Company Protection. If you've got any questions, if you'd like a copy of the business continuity guide that Caroline mentioned, just drop us a line. I'm happy to produce one for you. Send me your logo over and we can do that. We have actually developed an IAB specific landing page that you can visit if you want to know a bit more, drop us a message. What I'll do is I will put that in the chat for you, if you like, in a minute. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. I hope it's been interesting. I know insurances aren't much fun, so I hope it wasn't very boring. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I've got one actually, Matthew.
Yes.
Just before everybody starts in the chat, do you do sole director companies as well then?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can they get the business insurance as well?
Yeah, they can do. So
life.
Yeah, no, you can have pretty much anything you want to. All that changes, it's down to the tax relief or the tax treatment of the plans. So I mean, you guys are probably better qualified than us to discuss this, but ultimately, where you've got a business owner, things like relevant life, if it's a limited company, the way that the tax HMRC look at it is you've got a separate limited company entity, and then you've got a director owner of the business. There is a direct relationship between the two, but ultimately they're 2 separate entities. We can arrange the relevant life plan for that individual and they get full tax relief on it. And the reason is that we place the policy into trust, and ultimately they're never going to be the beneficiary, right? Because they're going to die in order for it to pay out. So then the money gets routed round to their family. And that actually enjoys full tax relief on that one. So they get full tax relief from the premium. You can take out all the policies as long as there is a business behind it, we can do it. So limited companies in particular are the easiest, obviously, because there is a separate entity which can be the policy holder. But we can also do it for partnerships and sole traders, just depending on what plans they want, whether they've got employees in the business as well. But ultimately, it's up to us to look at how we can help them and identify the most tax efficient way of doing it.
Right. Okay, brilliant. Just going to the chat, I'm just going to repeat something that Matthew said when I was on about my moons. So a fun fact, the moon is 1/400th the diameter of the sun, and coincidentally, 1/400th the distance from the surface of the planet of the sun, which is why we get a perfect eclipse.
There you go.
Thank you, Matthew.
I'm full of useless facts in the morning, aren't I? Rachel's asked a question. Am I okay to answer that?
I'm just going to read it now, actually. What's the difference between relevant life insurance and personal life insurance?
Okay, so personal life insurance is something you take out on your own. So you would have a direct relationship with the provider. So for example, I would have a life insurance contract with, say, Aviva. I would pay the premiums on it. Now, what happens is for me to pay those premiums, I've got to take money out of my business, which means I've got to pay national insurance, I've got to pay income tax, and then I'm going to pay additionally insurance premium tax, on top of the premiums I pay to the insurance company. The difference between personal life insurance and relevant life is, with relevant life, it's not you who takes out the policy, it's the company. So the business takes out the insurance contract as an employee benefit. The business pays the premiums. And what happens is essentially then, because the business is the proposer, it's paying it as an employee benefit. It comes straight out of the gross earnings and it gets full tax relief. So those premiums are a tax deductible expense. That's the fundamental difference. It provides the same cover. It's usually the same premium. The difference is about half the cost because it's coming off gross earnings rather than having to take money out of the business and then spend it on net income.
Yeah. Thank you. Fabo says Fabo is based in South Africa. I'd like more information on this. It is excellent. So I'm going to lead you back to a link, which is www.companyprotection.co.uk/IAB/ I think that's where we can find you. Is it, Matthew?
Yeah, I've put the link in the chat. So a little bit further up,
Yeah.
about 11:21, I'll put the link in the chat. So by all means, and I'll do it again just in case. But yeah, there's the link to the website. So if anyone's got any inquiries, please fill in the form.
So that's there. Rachel's put that may be so, but I was advised that personal life was more beneficial with a better cover.
Exactly the same policies. I don't know who told you that, but they're exactly the same policies. They might be referring to group life cover. So relevant life is very different because it's an individualized policy. Group life is a little bit different in that group life is where we'd have a business of multiple employees. So usually from 10 upwards, yeah. And you'd have a large group scheme, which is run through a master trust, and you'd have all the employees that come in and out of the business being insured universally through that plan. Quite honestly, there's again not much difference in that. The only challenge with group stuff is it falls inside the lifetime pension allowance. So that's why relevant life is far better for higher earners and directors of businesses. But ultimately, there is no difference in the quality of the life insurance contracts between personal and relevant life. Absolutely none. If anything, they're identical contracts. The only difference is that the company's the proposer. What's interesting about the business ones is sometimes actually the advantage of having it through the company is that all employees of the business get access to some of the benefits that the providers offer. So when you're taking out these contracts, there are ancillary benefits like 24/7 GP services or member helplines or legal aid that you can get for the business that you wouldn't get on a personal contract.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. And I'm working with Matt at the moment to implement some of these policies in my company, and Matt has been absolutely brilliant to work with.
Thank you.
So,
you've been very helpful as well. I mean, you've been very open and transparent about the business, and it always helps me to kind of identify how I can help. But thank you very much.
So we really worked to find something that's relevant and works for me. So yeah, cool. Very personalised service. So brilliant. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Great. And now we're going to very swiftly move on to Rob. Thank you very much, Matthew, again. Move on to Rob from our IAB compliance team, who's going to talk to us about firm risk assessments and then update us all on the new CCAB guidance. Hello, Rob, are you there?
Hello, Carol. Yes, thanks for that. If you do a screen share thing, I'll go into a PowerPoint. But before I do, can I just underline what we just heard from Matthew about business continuity is a bit of a drum I tend to bang on as well, because it's certainly relevant for bookkeepers in regard to compliance. The insurance components that have just been talked about are really significant in terms of the loss of people. Well, there's a range of other things you need to do for business continuity. For instance, what if you lose data? What if you lose services? And you've got some legal responsibilities for maintaining records, for example, that you need to be right on top of. Because if the flood arrives or the fire burns down everything, then notwithstanding there's insurance that will put money in your pocket, and if you've thought ahead and gone up that road, but there will be a legal requirement to you to still be able to produce records. So there's a few legs on business continuity, and it's really good to hear today that we've got that focused on. So I'll just underline all of what we just heard as part of a bigger picture. Right, I'm looking to share screen now. Yes, that's looking good.
It should let you.
Yeah, I think it's working.
I've got a black screen, Rob.
Hang on. Should we?
Oh.
Anything happened yet?
Yes, I've got firm risk assessment, Rob Harvey, 15th of June, 2022.
Right, cooking on gas. Okay, this is something we visited before, I think in March, and it keeps coming around. It's an area still where there's question marks for some people, and it's something that's moving along as well. In what does one of these look like, or what even is one? So let me just cover this and chance for some questions at the end. First of all, an emphasis that it's not a kind of one-time tick list thing. I know we've been used to using that, and in fact, later on, I'll point up a jot form that IAB have got set up. But the one single message, hopefully, I can convey on this is to treat the firm risk assessment not as a task, but as a process. It's a continuing story as you run your business about the inherent risks and how you're dealing with them. And that's not something that you do one time. It's a bit like crossing the road. You keep looking and you keep listening. So that's the single central message today. I'm going to go into some more detail.
Rob, I can't hear you. Is it just
Yeah, I
me?
was going to say, have you lost Rob, or is that just me?
I can't hear him either.
Yeah, Rob, we've lost you.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, good. Technology, eh? What was I just saying about business continuity?
From firm risk assessment.
Yes. So firm risk assessment seems obvious. What's it talking about? It's talking about the firm as in the business entity. It's about your business, your staff or contractors if you employ them, the services that you offer and the clients that you have. And the firm risk assessment, picture of a helicopter there, it's the overview of everything that's going on and picking out where those areas of risk are. And obviously it's a changing picture, so that needs to be a continuously reviewed position. When I say the business, what are we talking about? Well, it's about where the risk might arise. So business knowledge, how consistent and broad spread is the business knowledge within your bookkeeping operation. That includes the MOR. Capacity and capabilities. What have you got the capacity to do the things that are required? And if particularly in terms of employing staff, have they got the capability to do what's needed to manage the risk and identify them? It's about what ways of working you've implemented. And it's about how you oversee those and what provision you've got for things like, for example, training of yourself or of your staff. So it's this overview of how good is my business in those areas. Now, there's some resources out here to help. Some of you will be aware, but make no apology for reiterating these. There's 8 course modules on IAB Blue that will take you through some of the practicalities of this. If you've not done these yet, I do recommend you have a look at them. It's not expensive and it will give you some additional tips, no doubt. There's a lot of resources now on the new and improved IAB website. And there's a whole section on member AML resources, again, with guidance and practical tips about things that we're talking about. And there is online a firm risk assessment format, which you can use as an online form that you fill in and generates then a printout of what it is. And again, you can do that as often as need be. So just to give you a look-see on some of what's out there. This is an extract from the a screen grab from the member section, the AML guidance member section. You can see all these things down here are links to different issues. Firm risk assessment gets a mention there, the regulations, what's supervision about, responsible members about how are the inspections work. So look, it's all there. If you've not seen this yet, please do visit it and it will give you a good deal of insight. Even those who are long-standing, this has been improved and updated. Just a few more of the kind of topics that are in there. Training, boom declarations. There's a whole range of stuff there. One of the things that's included also is a page on risk updates that's constantly refreshed. So this is industry information, stuff from the NCA, and wider, that helps keep you informed and up to speed on what emerging risks are, what trends there may be, and things that you need to be aware of as you refreshing your own firm risk assessment. And I'll come to the CCAB updates in a minute, but doing that and using this information from IEB has now become something of a must do in the CCAB guidance. So it's sort of moved up there in the things you need to do. So again, there's the link for that online format. I think we'll be sharing this PowerPoint afterwards, so it's included there for people's reference. This is what this looks like. It's a form, and those of you who've not seen it, I've just got a couple of screen grabs here. It's fairly straightforward. There's questions to ask, yes, no answers, things like this. If you answer a question that indicates that you're in a risk position, it will flag that up. It sort of turns red. So at least you know where something is indicating as a risk. So back to this kind of overview of what the firm risk assessment's about. One of those 4 elements at the beginning was staff and contractors. So these, people that you employ. So who have you got employed or engaged? And you'll know that there's a term agents is used. What that means is anyone who you contract for services, even for a short time, and there are requirements that you need to check certain things about them, like they themselves are trained and competent to do what you're asking them to do with regard to anti-money laundering and the money laundering regulations. So, well, what kind of things about these people, staff? What brings risk? Well, their integrity, obviously. Again, it's another update I'll mention towards the end, but there's now a requirement that you check the integrity. You carry out screening of people that you employ, not just when you employ them, but at intervals through their appointment. Lack of experience means they're not perhaps on top of what they need to do for AML quite the way, or perhaps they just don't know something, or perhaps even with experience and knowledge, they're just the kind of people who aren't as competent or as focused as should be in the tasks that they've got. That happens, doesn't it? So that implies that to be on top of that, you need to be focused on training, supervision, and monitoring of what your staff do and what your agents produce. All of this is, if there's gaps in this, then that is leading towards your business operation, because of the staff and the way you manage them, being more of a risk. And that's fine as long as you're aware of it. Because if you're aware of it and you've considered it in this helicopter view, as I've suggested, then likely you'll be able to put something in place that takes account of it. You'll keep an eye on that person you employed a few months ago, perhaps who isn't shaping as well as you thought they would. Firm risk assessments very much about services. Some services, and I mentioned at the beginning that word inherent risk. Well, some services we'll already understand are inherently risky when it comes to anti-money laundering. So what is your offer? If you're off, what services do you offer to people? Do you understand amongst those offers what are the risky ones? And if they are presenting a risk and you're still going ahead to do, there's no reason not to. But what do you do what have you done to reduce the risk? Well, the first point of this is, do you understand which ones do pose a risk, which inclines you then to do something about it? And then again, this is firm risk assessment. This is the territory we're in. I mean, just to run through some of those, these would be high risk services, higher risk services. So if you're doing these things, then that's going to bring inherent risk into your business, because these are the kind of things where money laundering becomes perhaps more of a problem. But again, no reason not to do it, so long as you're aware of the fact that that's a risk and how it works and the mechanism behind things, so you can put steps in place that means you're on top of where those risks are, and you see the red flags, and you're in a position to take action if need be. Other things, yeah, there's a need for caution. around these kind of services. Same thing applies. If you understand what it is, what you're doing, where the risk is, and what you might need to do to diminish that risk, and demonstrate that you're aware of that. And lastly, these kind of things, perhaps less, in the less risky category. So it's more of a scenic route. I found that Pacific Coast Highway is definitely a scenic route. So this is perhaps a little bit more comfortable territory, but nevertheless, you constantly aware of the possibility that whatever interaction is with the client, and the way that they're asking you to, even the more straightforward services, there might be a risk involved. So it's just a quick indication that these are some of those things. So clients, this is where we've all heard that know your client phrase. It's very much about that. All of these questions apply, and many more besides. If you've not asked the questions, then you've raised the risk. If you've asked the questions and not understood the answers, then you've raised the risk. If you've asked the questions, understood the answers, but not done any verification that the answers are actually true, then you've raised the risk, and so on and so on. The thoroughness is the key here, and the firm risk assessment here is focusing on not just the clients that you've got, but the processes that you have to go through this questioning and to make sure you've got to the right answers. So it's about what brings a risk and what reduces it. And again, no reason not to take on a client, even if you deem them high risk, provided that you understand that and you've got some means in place to reduce the risk. So, having done this overview of what's going on, and it's something, as I said, that isn't a one-off thing. It isn't something you do when you just start the business, or necessarily something you do every Christmas or once a year. But it is something then that starts to inform your policy. Because having looked at the services you offer, you might decide that as a matter of policy, you're not going to offer some services, for example. So that would be the firm risk assessment has influenced your policy. Or that recognizing that you are going to offer high risk services, your policy will be that you're always going to do certain things in respect of every client to make sure that you've identified any issues with them. So again, that's a policy issue. Once you've made those decisions, then it's going to influence what procedures you introduce. And we'll go back to talking about staff. If you've introduced a procedure, what is it aiming? What is it intended to do? Is CDD to capture identity information, to verify it, to make a record of it, to archive that record? All of that's about procedure. And I've mentioned already business processes. So your policy and your procedures should reflect business processes that the firm risk assessment indicated to you were necessary. Like, you don't just assume that everyone knows what they're doing. There's a process there to monitor and check. And taking all that into account, you should be in a position to evidence what's in place and how it works to address those risks. Now, why is it important to evidence it? Because this is a legal duty. So if you're required to do it by law, you need to be in a position, if somebody asks, for instance, in an inspection, but potentially otherwise as well, that you can show that all these things were all done and they're all joined up and they all make sense. Okay, moving off that, and I said about the CCAB changes. Now, these went live. There's been a draft document floating around for at least 12 months. Well, that's now been signed off. So the new CCAB guidance document went live in last month. Some changes. So first of all, reporting persons of significant control discrepancies, when you make a check with company's house, and if you've been told the director's Joe Smith, but company's house says it's somebody else, then if that discrepancy exists, it still says you tell company's house as soon as practicable, as soon as reasonably, but they actually think that instead of 30 days, that should be within 15 days now. So that's narrowed that down. within the guidance, there's a whole lot of things that have changed from should do, which is sort of advisory, isn't it, to must do. Sorry, we lost that, right? So you must include risk information from your supervisor, in this case IAB, in your FRA process. I mentioned that earlier. You must have procedures, which means documented and worked through, to assess any new services or products that you are offering. And that must be reflected in your FRA process. Similarly, you must have ways of assessing new ways of working and mitigating risk. You must assess relevant employees before and during employment. Now, relevant employees means those who are involved in the process that relates to MLR. So, you know, somebody who comes in and fixes the light bulbs, obviously not, but people who are working with you in your bookkeeping process, you do. You must see original documents and keep copies for CDD. Now, in a minute, we're going to come on to electronic verification, but this still applies even there. You must have CDD identification for people, and I've called it here acting on behalf of. So if you know who the boom is and the PSC is of a company, but you never see them, they're somewhere else in the mix, but you daily work with somebody representing them, then you also need to do CDD on them. CDD's got to take place even if there's a delay. So you might not be able to get right to the end of some of the CDD, but you need to do some of it, even where there's a delay completing it. So if you're engaging with a client, you need some sort of CDD. There's some changed rules about simplified due diligence. I won't go into that now, but it's there. You must have reliable procedures in place for checking the PEP status of clients. And again, that probably comes down to the electronic verification, which we'll come to in a minute. And there's some changes in the list of high-risk countries with regard to where your clients operate. That's a post-Brexit thing, which could very well affect some people. Also in the updates, there's some new case studies. There's stuff about identification for CDD. There's some additional red flags I mentioned. There's changes in what's the position about SARs when the reasonable excuse for not submitting a SAR has been redefined. There's some stuff about where you've requested a defence against money laundering from the National Crime Agency, and you're in the position where they haven't said yes and they haven't said no. So there's some stuff in about that, how you address that situation. The training of agents is mentioned, and provision of indirect tax services, enhanced due diligence, and electronic verification for CDD is mentioned. Essentially, what that's saying is that you need to, it's acceptable to only do CDD using electronic means, but the service that you select, there's various things that you need to consider about it. And one of them is that they recommend you consider is, are you able to download copies of whatever information is forthcoming, potentially to print them out? So it sort of goes full circle here. It's saying, yes, you can use electronic verification, but you still need to have some form of copied proof that you can archive of what that verification was. So it's almost as if you were doing a screen grab of whatever that feeds you back, printing it off and keeping a copy, or at the very least having a screen grab file on your system that demonstrates that what you did on the 15th of June 2 years ago, this is what it said. So that's where we're up to that. So CCAB guidance, it's been refreshed. It is right at the center of what you do. Certainly recommend you have a look at it. So there's again some, just as a last, I'm opening up for questions now, but there's a couple of links there, including the second one is a link to the new guidance document. So back over to you, Caroline.
I have a couple of questions. Jennifer says, thank you, Rob. This is really helpful. The FRA seems a really good starting point when checking through all our AML documents, systems and controls as a risk-based approach. And then just going back to the CDD. Oh,
yes.
Where's my chat gone? Rachel's asked, regarding seeing original documents, what happens when the director is overseas? I can't ask him to bring the original documents to show me. Can we do electric verification then?
You can do electronic.
Not electric.
Electric, yes. Well,
we could electrocute him, but no, electronic, I mean, sorry.
Well, the guidance does say that you can use wholly, you can do your verification wholly by the means of subscribed services. But whatever they produce, again, I won't tediously read through all of it, but it's well worth a look. It's on page 59 of the new guidance, if you want to make a note of that. Basically, they're saying, yes, use electronic verification, but find a way of copying what it presents you with. For example, some of these systems will access passport data. And so it will show you on your screen the passport information, and you can copy that. So that's what they're saying. I mean, if you've got somebody overseas, again, face-to-face meeting features, at least one face-to-face meeting to identification is a big feature of CDD. So I just pose a question, isn't it possible to arrange that at least once at the start of the engagement? But failing that, having the best subscribed service that ticks all the boxes that are in the guidance, you can still live with that.
Yeah, I actually picked up a couple of guys that live and work in London for my clients that travel to London to work, and they actually just came up to Scarborough for a weekend, brought the missus and the kids, and we met on Saturday morning. And yeah, it was nice. Yeah. Jenny says, I was told during my inspection that electronic verification only was not acceptable to the IAB.
Yeah, well, the new guidance, it says it is. I mean, as I say, whenever that inspection was, this is the new guidance that's emerged in May. I'll double check that stance with Jodie, but here and now, I'd say it's more likely that we'll be following the new guidance. I'll double check with Jodie what that is.
And Louise,
I think the emphasis, though, Caroline, just to underline that, is even in the new guidance, it says you've got to have hard copy, or you've got to have copies of whatever you use, be they electronic copies of a screen or printed off versions of it. And I think that's probably what that links with.
Right, okay, thank you. Louise has said, assume we can use biometric checks instead of physically seeing the original passport.
Again, that's going to be your interpretation of what the guidance says. Biometrics are not mentioned in this bit. I'd have to read more widely on that. It's part of electronic verification. So the answer is probably yes, but with a caveat of everything I've previously just discussed.
Does the IAB have somebody that the preferers to use for electronic verification? Is there a list somewhere that we can access, or is it just?
Sarah, I'd ask you to comment, but my comment on that at the minute would be, I don't think so, but we're working on it.
Right.
To partner with someone to provide that.
Okay. We haven't got that published at the moment, but I mean, at source, there's only 2 or 3 bodies that actually provide this. Although there's many on the market, they always go back to the main 2 or 3, which is I can't remember, Equifax, Experian, yeah. And there is, and always the question to ask, whichever electronic checking tool that you're using, you should understand where the actual source data is coming from. So that's definitely a question to ask of whichever provider that you're using.
Thank you.
And just that CCAB guidance is actually, for legislation, it's actually quite a pleasant read, and it's actually quite useful. So while it is, I don't know, so what, 112 pages, or it's actually a very useful document, and I do refer to it quite a lot in my practice, and I think it's one of the most relevant documents in terms of legislation and trying to apply it. So I would actually really encourage you to have a look at it and just go through the sections that you're working on at the time and pull out. It's actually a constructive document. I do think.
Can we find that document on the IAB website?
There is links to it. Rob had it on that last slide as well. So though Rob's slides will be available later when the recording's online too. So it'll be on the website and the links on there, but we can, you can probably put it in the chat now actually, Rob, if you've got it.
Yeah, well, and there will be a email circulated, I think tomorrow, with a whole lot of more stuff about these updates. But certainly, yeah, I can put this in the chat while we're chatting.
So Jenny says the inspection was last month, and thank you.
Yeah.
Joyce says I have a policy of only acting for clients who I can meet in person, even if it means a meet in the middle trip if they live a distance from me. Yeah, that's good policy, Joyce. I follow that and agree wholeheartedly. Denise has put, I used to use AMLCC for verification purposes. Will IAB have a system we can use going forward? The IAB is looking at that.
It is on the roadmap, but I can't tell you when at the moment. So
no.
Yeah.
A few delays.
It's definitely very active work in progress. Very active work in progress. Yes.
Oh.
Brilliant.
Sorry, gosh.
I'm just going to post that.
I have a question for you. The original documents that you need to see and keep copies of,
Yes.
if your clients, if you only see them once a year and say you saw them in April, do you need to see them again to get those original documents, or can I just wait till next April?
Well, if you once you've established their identity, then that isn't going to change. I mean, it's worth refreshing it from time to time, but it isn't necessarily annual. Right. I'm not sure. I think probably a more specific example might help, Caroline.
Are you thinking about address, like utility bill or something like that, rather than the actual ID? Is that?
I was thinking more a copy of the passport or the driving license. I hold some of mine electronic at the moment, but if I then need a copy of it, I'd need to see the person back again, wouldn't I? And photocopy the actual driving license or passport, and then.
My thoughts on that would be, if I come to you as a client now, and you see my passport and you've kept a copy of that, then you probably don't. I won't have changed that much, I hope, in 12 months. But
no,
10 years from now, you
need to renew it.
You might want to update it. But exactly, the stuff that can change is worth reviewing. Address, all those bits and pieces.
Okay, thank you. I just need to read this link out. Because unfortunately on the recording you can't see the chat. So the link that Rob's put on is www.ccaB.org.uk/uploads/May-2022.pdf. Thank you, Rob. I'm glad it wasn't any longer.
That was easy for you to say.
Jennifer's put, I always check the client's ID is in date and get it updated when it runs out. Well done.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I do.
Michael has put, I've taken a picture on my mobile more recently of updated ID. Is that okay? Rob?
Yeah, I mean, a photograph is a copy, provided it's, clear and good enough. And you keep that copy in your records. I think it's 5 years until after you cease trading with the person.
Yeah, before
I don't see any problem with that.
Yeah. Ian's put, eyes are always the best way of identifying people. Mohammed's put dashing. I don't know if he means me or him or.
No, I think we're getting close to 12 o'clock. I think we're going to have
Michael's put,
to wrap
thank
up.
you. And Eva's put, that was very interesting. Thank you, Rob.
But what I'd just like to say is I'm very, very much looking forward to the awards next week. Hopefully I'll be seeing many of you there. So not helpful with the train strikes, but at least they are either side of our awards, not on the actual awards day. So fingers crossed there's no further interruptions. I'm not sure I said at the beginning, sorry, Janet wasn't here today because we've actually got international guests have already arrived. So it's busy here. But yeah.
Have you any updates before we go, Sarah?
So yeah, one minor update actually, just quickly. As you know, we all sit on a lot of the HMRC forums here. We've had the payroll forum this week, and what HMRC are advising is that there's quite a big problem with PAYE being allocated. This is not news, but what is happening because of COVID, there's quite a lot of PAYE debt, and HMRC are still allocating any payments for the current tax year to oldest payment first, which is actually obviously creating interest payments as well. So while they've updated the website and you can now see where they've allocated the money, which is an improvement, it is still being allocated to oldest payment first. So if you are advising your clients to pay any PAYE, make sure that they have those 4 digits at the end of the, your PAYE reference, year, month, so that HMRC can allocate it accordingly. So just remind your clients when making the payments to make sure that that's there. But there is 2 million sat in a pot of PAYE that's been paid to HMRC that they can't allocate. So if you are getting letters from your client saying they haven't paid, I would recommend a phone call saying, can you check first? That is a big problem and a growing problem. But that's it really on that front. So yeah, that's all for me at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody else. And we'll meet again Wednesday, the 20th of July, 11 till 12.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.